Another draft physics video. Yay. Anyway, I'll do some comments. Holiday posted another video to 60 Symbols videos on the subject of the de Broglie wave, whatever, and the Higgs boson. And no, not interested. De Broglie, maybe I'll do that as another subject. I mean, I've talked about it before. I think it's just completely bogus the way they gave electrons a wavelength. They don't have a wavelength. You can shoot electrons at any frequency, and to convert their velocity into a wavelength, just because they're moving a speed, they just say, okay, if they're going this fast, they have this frequency, even though they're not moving at a frequency. It's just, it's so dishonest to what's really happening. And so he's done a video on this idea of this, I don't even know. It's just weak science. You know, his line is, what is he using? Some line they use, just so stories. And all of physics, in my opinion, is made out of a lot of just so stories. I mean, I've already listed them all. I mean, there's no point in going over it again, right? I mean, there's no response, there's no counter arguments here. I mean, I've pointed out the flaws in the two-slit mathematics, the fact that the pattern in photons and light doesn't do what it's supposed to do, which is show a sine wave of gradation in intensity, and there's no such gradation in intensity. The bars are quite harsh. Okay, the lines between dark and light are quite harsh, a lot harsher than the mathematics said they should be. And they don't care. Those flaws don't matter. The fact that they changed the mathematics from the single slit to the double slit, they changed the variable. So in the single slit math, the width of the slit is the variable. In the double slit math, the width of the impediment is the variable. The same variable is a different thing entirely. And that's okay. That's nothing to be, that doesn't really make sense. It doesn't show any continuity or consistency. For your perfect, most brilliant mathematics in the history of mankind bullshit. But anyway, and so I've already gone through the problems with lensing, all these things that are just, it's weak evidence, and they keep claiming this evidence is something more than just so-so in terms of, it's not brilliant evidence. It doesn't draw a picture of reality. And in fact, it draws a silly picture when you think about it. That everything in physics now, since Einstein's first invention of the fake space, it's just gotten worse and worse. I mean, and it's the irony of the fact that Einstein was arguing with other people about fantasy theories. Who's got the best fantasy theory? No one wanted to come up with a real solid rock, physical theory. To think that Einstein was arguing with people who, think photons don't have a position, and are communicating telepathically, and all of this. I mean, they're almost childishly silly scapegoat and swept under the rug, and just God of the gaps. They're all God of the gaps answers. We see something happen, we don't understand it, and they're calling it Sasquatch. They're saying the boogeyman did it. It's always some new thing that we can't see. Dark energy, dark matter, Huygens, Heisenberg, de Broglie, a fake wavelength that doesn't really exist. But we just use it because the math works. If we call it a wave, if we call velocity a wavelength, the math works. Instead of understanding the phenomenon and why the math works, they just say, okay, we can accept that. Speed is now a wave. It doesn't, it's just so bad. And for them to point a finger and say other people's their evidence is just so, when first their theory unifies physics and explains phenomena that have never been explained, magnetism, and they're just, it's ludicrous to have a conversation in this context. They think they have it's like the Pope saying the Native Americans' totem pole has no meaning. You know, it's a silly religion. Yeah, fuck you. You know, when they have no evidence for any of this shit. So anyway, this guy, Peter Yankovich, great name. Anyway, so he apparently responded to a few of the Cowboys bullshit comments that are just hilarious. But some other guy made a comment. Let me see if I can find that one. You know, making, again, these gratuitous comparisons. Everybody's a crank. So anybody who disagrees with the establishment is a truther. Everybody who disagrees with the theory of you know, bent space is making matter move. They believe the Earth is flat. I mean, it's just so, you know, there's what? Is there anything to respond to? And then they go by, you know, and they're all people with fake names, fake identities. So he calls himself Gary Cube. Well, you're going to get blocked, okay? I mean, if you can't be a genuine person while you insult somebody, that just shows your lack of character. If you're going to make insults, you're going to impugn somebody else's intelligence or their integrity, then you fucking ought to do it with your real face, you little pussy. Alright, so I hope you realize you're using the same tactics as Time Cube guy. So again, any theory is undetailed, has no specifics. The theory I'm presenting it's just time theory. That's it. There's no explanations. There's no conformity to what is observed in the real world, in the universe. It's completely undebunkable because I'm blaming something completely invisible. And yet this is an argument coming from people supporting theories that are exactly that. How do I disprove the existence of bent space? How do I disprove how do I prove the non-existence of their magical dark matter? You know, they're the ones with the leprechaun theories. So it's just so bullshit. It's quite amusing how all cranks, so I don't know why he CR and then he asterisk asterisk KS have the same type of mentality in common. So again, just because, you know, there's some guy making kind of a comic video just pointing out he says some kind of cube theory, and he has a cube with an earth in it, and therefore he says it's some cube thing. And therefore, like I said, everybody's doing that. There's nobody can ever sincerely ridicule or challenge any authority because, oh, as soon as they do, they're going to be labeled, oh, you just have a tinfoil hat. And I guess, again, these are the emperors wearing apps. These are the nakedest fucking emperors going. I mean, I pointed out how terribly weak their evidence is, how terrible their standards are, how closed their conversation is. I mean, it can't be more fucking ivory tower. You can't even suggest a conversation challenging any of their assumptions, challenging the authority of their pope, their wave theory. I mean, it just, fuck you people till goddamn dead. You just so fucking goddamn suck. So, I mean, I wish you'd just use your real name just for posterity's sake so everybody can know what a fucking little prick you are. You can't make a real argument. All you can do is do this fake bullshit. Look, I linked to a video that buffoons you by comparing you to a flat earther. Fuck you. Alright, so Mad Flea Willing. I agree, Time Cube makes about as much sense as Gary's rectum-derived theories. And again, the ones you can't challenge with anything called a fact. Again. And even though I've offered your authorities real good money, why don't they pick up the challenge? Again, it's really not that hard to say to somebody, well, your theory is vacuous. It's as vacuous as saying, hey, God did it. Well, go ahead and try that. Go ahead and try to challenge my theory by saying I'm the one with I'm claiming some supernatural process takes place. Some supernatural field. Some supernatural bent thing. Some black thing, okay? Some mystery black thing. Fuck you people. And he has to comment again on the same stupid idiotic comment. How come these guys never offer to pay $10,000 to a scientist to flesh out their theories more so that it might be more readily accepted? Oh, you mean they'll work for me for $10,000? I don't see the difference, frankly. How haven't I done that? I mean, yeah, I guess you haven't seen the emails I've sent, but the emails I sent to a couple of emails to people suggesting collaborations. They're not interested. So I was going to give them part of my credit. Hey, you want to be in on it? They don't want. They're not interested. You think that would be a more rational thing to do. So again, you know exactly what I have or have not done. No, you don't know shit. You're just a shit-talking, lying piece of shit. So yeah, fuck Gary Cube. You're done here, fella. Whoops, I think that's the wrong one again. Don't want to always approve. No. That wouldn't be the right thing to do. Alright, so Superior Mind obviously made some nice comments. He gets it, fine. But yeah, the assholes are just the assholes. Okay, so this is a Mad Flea comment. How about instead of you blocking me, you give me some guidelines as to what is allowed? Look, when you sit there and just use these gratuitous insults, when you put up nothing, all right, you haven't linked me to your perfect science. Well, I've asked for the links to this fucking lensing proof. Why don't you show me your biggest piece of proof of gravitational lensing and give me the opportunity to pick it to pieces? Because it's going to be crap. Anyway, as to what is allowed in comments and what isn't allowed, I'm not going to sit there and just let you graffiti on my videos with fucking rectum talk, you fucking dirty, stinking piece of crap. You can't figure that out? Where do I do that? Show where I do that to somebody else's videos. I hate a lot of people on the internet, but I'm not a fucking vulgar piece of shit like you. People have to watch my videos. I don't get to rub them in their noses, you dumb cunt. And you can't figure that difference out? You can't really see the difference between somebody who has to click on the video, actually hear me talking, and has to, for most of the time, before I'm going to get it all insulting or nasty, they have to want to hear it in a sense, all right? Because it's not being imposed on them. Your comments are an imposition. I didn't invite it. I didn't click on anything and said, give me some fucking asshole comment. So fuck you. If you can't be reasonably polite, then fuck off. You can't figure that out? Maybe you're such a dirty pig that you'll let people fucking insult you. You'll let them piss on your back and say it's raining, but I won't, you dumbass. That way I don't screw up and you get blocked Well, again, you don't seem to give a shit. You're just a liar anyway. You just keep creating fucking fake name fucking accounts that have nothing to do with the subject or nothing to do with anything reasonable. I thought you were interested in having an argument. I'm not interested in having an irrelevant argument about how big or gaping your fucking anus is. No, I'm not interested. If you can make a physics argument somewhere, well, that I'll listen to. But you don't make physics arguments. You do ratty-tat-tat things. You write poetry, you fucking douche. And with discussing your physics with others. So give me some terms of engagement before. No, I've made the terms of engagement so many fucking times. You're just too fucking stupid. And you just keep demonstrating. You're just too fucking stupid. Anyway. So. There was another thing I wanted to get to. Maybe I'll draw a little. I'll see if I can use this drawing program. But it's probably not going to work out very well. But the whole polarization subject, I thought of another angle. It's always bothered me that you could take polarized film and block all the light. Because I'm saying, well, what if I do that with a green laser? That film should almost start melting because it's absorbing all of that energy. Because they're not very reflective, polarized filters. And then the other thing that bothered me was thinking about how straight the actual the little bits that are flying through space, how perfectly they can be aligned, like how much can they be off alignment and still be received as a signal, and so that got me thinking about polarization, because I've never really liked the idea that I'm quite certain about the gravity having two polarizations, but to create the forces for protons and electrons, and I think I've explained those forces. Now that really does explain magnetism and electricity and the nuclear forces, and it's really good stuff. But why would photons be another kind of polarization? Because it would almost have to be another kind, because I'm claiming that the photons are all black energy. So I can't use the black-red analogy for their polarization. And so there has to be a second kind of polarization for photons. And I'm just saying, well, that's sort of redundant. So I don't like that. I mean, it could be the truth, but I don't like it. So what occurred to me was that polarization really is about the alignment of the photons. So, they're not in alignment. They're not coming right in a perfect stream. They're coming, so this might be, if they were in a perfect stream, that might be called, what do they call that? Circularly polarized. So perfect alignment would be circular polarization. And anything other would be something else, And it does create the same idea of a line. And what it also allows for is a polarizing filter to merely be breaking the polarization. I mean, breaking the frequency, because it's blocking one element of the wave, so to speak. The two things, it's absorbing one of them and letting the other one go through. So that's why that's not the same energy equation. And I don't think anybody's done it's kind of complicated doing thermodynamic experiments. You have to put everything in a pressure, take all the vacuum out, and you have to figure out how much energy, where the energy goes. But it would be interesting to see if they can account for all the energy being absorbed by the polarizing filter, because I don't think they can. So I think it is getting scattered, and it's getting scattered as broken photons. The frequency is broken, therefore you can't see them as photons anymore. The energy is still there, they're still force bits, they're just not at a perfect frequency anymore because they were staggered. So the idea would be is if you have this grating, what's happening is one of the bits hits the grating and one bit doesn't. And you can sort of see it creates the same situation, that when it's in alignment, it'll go through. When it's out of alignment, there's a higher probability of one of the force bits that make the photon hitting a bar and one not. So, and what it also creates is the idea that radio waves always seem to be like they could have a great separation. This is what the experiment with microwaves kind of demonstrates. That the microwaves, the photons are very close together. So that when I show the out of alignment like this, they're really close, but there is this little 800 nanometer out of alignment thing, as a possibility. Could be more, could be less. Because it's being emitted by an electron. I was thinking about the electron. It would be the thickness of the electron, because it was, let's say, when the electron's emitting, releasing light, what's happening is the electron is moving because it's getting hit with a force. So when it moves up, it lets one of the bits out. When it moves down, it lets another bit out from the top. So it's really the thickness of the electron that you're measuring when you're measuring the nanometers of light, which is interesting. The thickness of the movement, the width of the movement of the electron. I didn't mean the thickness of the electron, I mean the amount it moves. And so that makes sense. And so that makes sense that they would be different, because the electron had to move to let one out the top, so to speak, and one came out the bottom, so to speak. And so that would sort of fit with making radio waves inside of matter, and that their separation could be much bigger. So like in the case of the microwaves, it's a much bigger filter because the separation can be bigger because of the fact that it's not being absorbed by one electron. It's not being emitted by one electron. It's being emitted by, like an antenna, by atoms and a bunch of electrons. and it's absorbed the same way. You can sort of kind of understand that you don't hit one little tiny place with a radio wave on the antenna and create the signal. It can receive it on the whole length of the antenna. That's why the antenna has to be long, is because the length of the antenna is basically allowing for this difference. If you have too short an antenna, this difference is too much difference. The antenna is not big enough to collect both of the tons because they're separated by a distance. So that fits. So I'm liking this as an explanation for polarization. I haven't developed it yet, I just thought of it. See, this is the other trick, you know, I'm being held to this standard. They've had 100 years of their bullshit woo theory, and, you know, let's just say 1 million scientists. So they've had 1 million scientists working on it for 100 years. I've had 5 years and 1 person. And, you know, I'm not saying life's fair, but I'm just saying, you know, this idea that I should have just as fully a developed theory, you know, built by one man, you know, in a few years, as what it's taken them to manipulate and construct. You know, they've been writing their silly story, you know, their silly fable. They've had 100 years and literally millions of minds working on it. And you're judging my book, you know, based on the book of bullshit they've been able to write, because they've been able to come up with all kinds of excuses and justifications. And clearly now they just evade all the arguments because they don't even have conferences anymore. You'll never see a picture with all the great physicists all together anymore because there's no conferences anymore, right? You know, why did they pussy out? Why did they stop doing that? Why did all the great physicists stop going somewhere to discuss physics? Too many hurt feelings? Anyway, alright, so then, well, I guess I'll start from the bottom up since I'm here. It's Timmy, yeah, another doubtful reality of a person. What should I ask a science teacher? Well, science teachers, generally speaking, aren't even, you know, necessarily experts in science. They're just, you know, they just go through what the textbook says. So what are you going to ask them? You know, you certainly can challenge them to say, do you think you have evidence as strong as Darwin's theory of evolution when he proposed it? I mean, how strong do you think the evidence should be before when people start saying it is something? You know, should physicists say it is a wave? Light is a wave? Should that be written in a textbook? Have you really proven it? That's what you should ask them. Some ad flea willing. Interesting discussion if you mentally edit out the parts where you falsely accuse Hofstadter of cheating so he has a better argument. Frankly, again, so where's his better argument? It's not findable anywhere. His accusation is that somehow his science is credible and well evidenced, and he never cites the evidence. He just says the evidence is we have a mathematical formula. I point out how the mathematical formulas aren't even reliable, and he just ignores that. Does it ever occur to you that maybe the reason somebody is disagreeing with you is because they actually think you're wrong? Well, whether they think I'm wrong isn't really the issue. Why they think I'm wrong is what I'd like to get to, because I don't think it has anything to do with the physics I'm proposing. I'm saying if somebody else was suggesting this theory, if Feynman had suggested it, alright, Hofstadter, I don't think he'd be doing this bullshit. I don't think he'd be saying Feynman's whacked, Feynman's crazy. Why is Feynman talking like that? I don't think he'd do any of that shit. And I don't think he'd have any argument. You know, and he doesn't. And not because they have some personal bias. Well, I think you people do have an incredible personal, not only a bias because you don't like me, you don't like the rest of my philosophy, besides the physics philosophy. But I think you have also a bias for this silly notion that there's some hope that human beings are redeemable, that they're not just silly, dopey, evolution-created robots that that haven't even risen above the Borg. They're still in the natural Borg, essentially, slaves to their stomachs and penises, and you don't even get that part. And so yes, you're opposed to any physics theory that just illustrates how real that fact is. That it's a mechanical universe, it has no heart, it has no love, it has no spirit, it has no soul, it has no love at all. It's mean as shit. It's meanly as ignorant, and ignorance and want, as Dickens would say. These are the things you've got to recognize. That's what the universe creates. It's just ignorance, and it creates want. Big mistake. And they know they have a bias and lie to cover it. I'm just saying, Hathaway's tactics are clear. Okay, he just posted he made a video implying that he had evidence. These smart physicists are so much smarter than me. They have the right answer. I point out how the videos he links to don't even provide right answers, where the physicists are even disagreeing with each other. And then I, in my opinion, slam dunk on all three of the subjects in the sense that my theory is so much more rational than their silly, mushy, vacuous crap. Alright, so another mad flea willing. By the way, why does matter have inertia? Well, I've already been over, so many fucking times I've been over the fact of what atoms are doing and how it's to be able to create the circle, the square. That's what the right turns are doing, that you find so bizarre and silly. Well, those right turns, 4 of them, create a circle, idiot. And so force is trapped in those, between the electrons and the protons, in those kinds of circles, pressure circles. And if you have more mass on one side of that force, that is, you have a circle of force spinning, and there's more matter on the side going this way, and less matter on the side going this way, then what happens? Well, just like a spinning wheel, it goes the direction of where the force is, where the matter is. Let's see. My Mr. Science creep, that's the kind of stuff that's just going to get you blocked, all right? I don't have any obligation to accept your insults. You don't even have a name, you don't have an identity, you're not, I'm just not going to accept that. So fuck you. I have no obligation to accept it. How would the matter know how much it weighs? Again, the matter doesn't get to know any. I already went over this. I said weight is entirely atomic weight. There's no other weight. Okay? If you have weight on Earth, it's because you have atomic weight first. There's only one source of mass or weight, and that is how many electrons, protons, and neutrons you have. That's your material weight. Absolutely, in all circumstances. And then know how much to resist forces. Well, I don't even see. This is another reason why there's just no point. I'm just going to block you because I went over this. I overtly said in the video, there's no resistance to movement. It's a bullshit definition. There is none. Matter does not resist change. It's just an idiotic notion. It just obviously takes more force to move something heavy than it takes to move something light. That heavy thing isn't resisting moving. It just has more bits to move. It's not saying, I refuse to move. No, it's saying it just as much as these scissors. It's just that the scissors have less feet on the ground to push. It's just idiotic to say it's resisting. It's not resisting. It's saying bring on the movement force. I don't care. Yes, I'll move. If you hit me with a force, I will move. And yes, you have to hit me with enough force that equals my mass. And if I'm massive, then yes, you're going to have to hit me with more force. But I'm not resisting. Fucking idiot. Acting upon it. That sounds like a UFO theory to me. Well, this is, again, fuck you. There's nothing UFO about that explanation. I can't even, I don't even know what to say. That is so stupid. I was quite articulate in the video in explaining what matter is, what mass is, and how it functions. You don't understand, then you're too fucking stupid, I guess. So if I throw a pebble at you, you think you're going to explode? Have you ever, so this is Peter Yankovich responding to him, have you ever tried to think about geothermodynamics? How about your address the bent space theory? Do you think that planets have really warp, e.g. magical powers. Well, you think, yeah, well, I'm just saying, you actually think that it makes sense that it's not a UFO theory. It's not an extraordinary claim to say that somehow there's some special thing out there, not material, not any part of what we understand to be part of physics or reality, and it makes planets hurl into the sun. Yeah, it sounds like rubbish to me. I'll delete all of these, sorry. But yeah, just no need. I mean, it's just no point in me engaging with somebody who doesn't even pay attention to the video. I mean, fuck. He obviously didn't watch the video he's responding to. Why do the tons, again, they're force bits, know from themselves into a solid? Why do the force bits know to form themselves into a solid? Well, where did I suggest that matter was being made? Where did I make that suggestion? That you could just create matter out of force? So you want to go back all the way to like day one of the Big Bang, and you want me to explain to you how force was converted into matter? Or maybe it never was. Maybe the electrons always existed, just as the force always existed. So exactly why do I have an obligation to explain something that there's absolutely no evidence trail? Zero evidence. Zero. I mean, fuck you. What tells them to do this? Well, again, what told them Einstein? What told them to make bent space? What told the universe to make bent space? A force? What told... I mean, these are just silly questions. I don't need to explain why matter exists or why force exists. The obligation is to explain how the two interact in the current universe. I don't have to explain where the origin of the force came from, where the first thing that wasn't empty space came from. And again, you don't even think empty space is empty. So you have even a bigger thing to explain. You have a whole God to explain the existence of. Where did this bent space come from? It's obviously not empty space. If it can mechanically move planets, it's certainly not nothing space, so it must be some kind of something space. And where have you defined it or described it at all? You haven't provided one single shred. You haven't described a hair on the flea of it, of your theory. Nothing. So you need a force to explain away another force? Question mark. Again, these are all questions you could just ask your own silly theory. Or maybe you're a plant theist and your turtle gods... I'm not going to read it. Fuck this. Yeah, fuck it. No, fuck it. Fuck it. I'm not even going to read it. It's just too stupid. I mean, the whole fucking theory is written on a piece of paper, okay? I mean, the basic functions. If you can't argue with those specific... There's only 5 things being stated. I mean, light moves the speed of light. The gravity and light, the only thing that makes them different is the frequency. That magnetism is because of polarization. It's really fucking simple. Now, if you can't argue one of those things in some sort of rational way, there's nothing for us to talk about, you fucking disgusting piece of shit. Oh, man. Just amazing. Alright, so he does again. The same exact rhetoric. So I keep saying they're force bits. So you have to come up with some kind of silly way to say force bit, okay? Because that's what they are. Why do the force bits know for themselves into a solid? Well, you already did this. I don't know. Alright, well, I'll read the Peter Yankovich just for the sake of it. If you don't know abiogenesis, does that mean biology is a fraud? Yes, so no, that evolution is too. Because, if you don't define how the first chromosome was made, you obviously can't believe in any kind of theory regarding how the chromosome changes over time. Or do you think that life exists eternally? Yeah, he's not going to answer any of your questions, so there's no point. But clearly, these creation arguments have nothing to do with my theory. I've been quite explicit in telling people I'm totally disinterested in the origin of the universe. I don't give a shit whether it's oscillating. I don't care if it's a one-time event. I don't care. I just couldn't give a rat's ass. It's just not an interesting subject to me because, in my opinion, it's still a dumb force. Whatever did it, however it happened for no good fucking reason. And any asshole who thinks it happened for a good reason then has to explain where good reason came from. What poofed that into existence? So it's just God theories that have no end. Who gave birth to your God? I mean, it's just futile and stupid. Okay. Let's see. By the way, so this is Mad Flea Willing again. By the way, fuck making videos to you. Yeah, well, your videos aren't videos, okay? There's no content in them. They're just rubbish rhetoric, just insults and mocking, and there's no substance. I mean, I could do that. I mean, I've already thought, I have a pink unicorn, on a stick. And I was thinking, yeah, well, maybe I'll just make buffoon videos of you people, and I'll talk to the pink unicorn. Is that taking the high road? No, that's taking the really low road. Maybe I'll do it just for fun. Okay, but, you're the one provoking it, frankly. The fact that this audience is too stupid for a conversation provokes that kind of ridicule. I don't need to waste time making videos when I can say everything I want much more effectively and consistently in a comment. I don't give a shit how you say it, but you haven't said anything informative, effective, concise, rational, or reasonable. All you've done is spew insults, you useless sack of shit. Let's see. So Peter says, like you had anything valuable to say anyway. Yeah, there's no value. It's a useless troll. Wasting this time. This will be the last one. Okay, he can come back with a sock account. I'll just delete everything he writes. There's just no point. We've been over this. We've been down this road so many times. He posted questions. I answer his fucking questions. But it's just a waste of fucking time because there's nothing challenging the ideas. Nothing. I'm sorry, but there's no way. See, so here he goes. There's no way you can explain this triple polarizing filter phenomenon in terms of classical mechanics. Amazing. Listen. I don't give a shit about classical mechanics, but frankly, they're not classical. Okay, they're not physical mechanics. So what's called classic mechanics is wave theory, and frankly, I have nothing to do with that. But yes, you can describe it as mechanical. Strictly mechanical. No woo needed. No bent anything, no dark anything, no special functions whatsoever. No Heisenberg, no Huygens, no bullshit. And you do it as the simple explanation I now have given 3 times. And you want me to give it to you for a 4th time? And you're saying it's not an explanation? Well, it is an explanation. It fits the data perfectly. The filter is converting. Okay, and by converting that each time you put a filter in, they've done it with 10 filters, idiot. They've done it, 10 filters, just slightly moving each time. And they get a very strong, that way you don't destroy nearly as much of the light. So if you want to get the most light out at the other end, you do it 10 fucking times. You move it 10 degrees at a time. 10 degrees, 10 degrees, 10 degrees, and you'll get 80% of the light that went in. 80%. So you've put in 10 filters from here to here. And now you get 80% of the light gets through. Why do you think there's that difference, asshole, if the fucking light isn't being altered by the filters, you stupid cunt? Alright, so anyway. Why would the Polaroid bars be responsible for twisting and orienting the particles which are many orders of magnitude smaller than the bar's width? Because they're just like the 2-slit experiment. Because there's electrons that are involved. And the electrons between 2 bars, they create a consistent field. The field doesn't go sideways. The field doesn't warp in some strange parabola. No, it creates the 2 bars, create a nice parabola of electrons between them. Okay, they're like the magnetic field lines. They're nice, smooth lines. That's why it creates a consistent byproduct. Dumbass. Let's see. As they orders remember, according to you, there can be no forces at a distance acting on the particles. Well, again, according to me, it's all about electrons. There's no The photons only interact with electrons, nothing else. That's it. Electrons. Electrons create photons. An electron has to move for a photon to be created. Shit. It's caught. The photons are caught between the electrons. It's what's keeping the electrons. That's the pressure that makes them repulsive to each other. Again, there's no point. You can't pay attention to the videos. I already explained all this. It's on the fucking website, for fuck's sake. There's a diagram that shows you the pressure between the electrons. Well, that's what the fucking force is affecting. I had to repost this because some retard kept spamming the original. Well, he was doing good work because this isn't worth my time. Well, at least this comment was reasonable. So I'll say, look, if you can write comments like this, okay. All right? I'm sorry, but there's no way. So you can make it in contention, and I'll dispute it. That's fine. All right? But as soon as you start making gratuitously idiotic insults, then saying, I have to accept that, then fuck you! Take your smelly anus and take it to, go shove your best friend's head in it because he's an asshole for having you as a friend. Alright, so that's it. Good. Oh, man. Well, anyway, the Peter guy does say, please forgive me for engaging the troll. Well, yeah, I'm just as guilty. There's no point in it. Your ideas are very simple, but correct me if I'm wrong. You basically saying that the double slit has an electron field lines dictating force photon, ton photon interactions. Yeah, we'll just call them force bit. And just like that, those metal bars create a diffraction gradient. The field line electrons create the polarizing filter. Field line electrons. Well, I don't know what that's. But anyway, it's a brilliant idea. It's so simple. It gets rid of action at a distance. Well, it gets rid of Copenhagen, for fuck's sake. I mean, they're really proud of that. I mean, that stupid, whatever he is, the Iranian guy, blah, 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 he works for the BBC, does all these, and his videos are just getting more and more obnoxious. I mean, this last one, he's just talking about how it's all proven. And Copenhagen is accepted by all scientists. Well, yeah, when they survey physicists, only 1/3 of them believe in Copenhagen is the right interpretation. So again, just this total exaggeration. But yeah, you get rid of this nonsense. Photons with radar, photons that split in two. Yeah, you don't need any of that crap. Okay, so we will switch to the drawing program. And that will be of some or no use. We'll see. I'll just see if I can do some of it with practice a little bit. I hate I'm using Linux, so I am going to have to learn how to do all this stuff the Linux way, which is sort of irritating. So I don't have like a simple draw program. Well, anyway, I have to look for one. Instead, it's got way too much drawing or totally dysfunctional. I mean, the one they have built into some word processor is stupid. You draw something, and then it keeps making a box or something. You have to go back and click on the pen again each time. It's just, who the fuck thought that was a good idea? Fucking idiot. Anyway, so this should work. Yeah, that looks like that worked. Alright, so I'm now drawing, I think. So the idea would be is that you have electrons. Okay, we can make a little electron. And then you have another electron here, let's say, and they should be the same size, but screw that. Anyway, yeah, forget it. So far, so bad. I think this other electron's not even in the image. I'll have to see. Oh yeah, he's in there. Yeah, he made it. Just made it. So anyway, and they have these force bits between them. So the force is trapped between them, going back and forth, back and forth. So the closer the electrons are, the more energetic these rebounds are, bouncing back and forth lots more. At a higher frequency, they're bouncing back and forth. So the idea is the electron moves, say it moves this way, because it temporarily got hit a little bit. And a little bit sneaks out from the bottom here, right? And then when the electron, because it's in a field of other electrons, then the pressure from this electron says, I don't like you, get the hell away from me, you fucker. Oh, I should write a little frowny face. I don't like you, get away from me, you bastard. And so he sends a little piece of shit to hit this electron, and now this electron moves this way a little bit, goes back home, essentially. Well, now, when it goes back, it's going to release a little toner going this way. So they're going to be separated by this little bit of distance. So the real frequency is going to be their regular frequency. So they're going to have a separation in distance. And they're also going to have a separation in, so this is their frequency. The distance between them, this d here, is the frequency. But they're also going to have this variation, okay, and that's going to be their polarization. So if they end up coming out perfectly straight, like they both come out the same side because the electron moves far enough, if the electron gets hit hard enough, then both will come out the same side and you'll get perfectly coherent light. Maybe. It's just, like I said, this is just started. I mean, I just started this yesterday, so. And so this distance can be variable, but it's going to be some order of magnitude relevant to how much the electron moves, which isn't very much movement. So it's just the amount of movement the electron moves is going to, you know, from the electron bottom to the electron top movement. That distance will be the furthest distance these two will be apart from each other in terms of its polarization. So anyway, so that polarization will have an orientation, as I pointed out, in space. It'll be there'll be a shape where the two are coming in, one's here and one's here, you know, one here, and depending on how it was emitted. And certainly geometrically pure matter like crystals, you can imagine they would produce all the same polarization because all the light's being emitted from the same crystalline structure. But stuff like the sun, you can imagine that there'll be a bunch of polarizations, you know, every possible polarization, you know, every possible orientation that two electrons could be in. But anyway, so yeah, and so the idea was, again, as I pointed out, you can sort of get the idea of this whole thing by thinking about antennas and the fact that antennas have to be a certain length to have any kind of reliability in terms of picking up a signal. And I think that is because the photons of radio waves are very far apart, so this wavelength is very large. This could be a mile between them. See, and that's what I was thinking about, was, let's say a radio wave actually had a mile between the two photons, the two force bits that are making up the what will be received as this information. You'd have to say, how could the source possibly produce from exactly the same place when everything's being Brownian motioned? I mean, everything's moving a little bit like this, you know. And so how could I produce two radiotons in a row that were lined up, because I might be here when I produce the first one and I might be here when I produce the second one. So, you know, that because of the Brownian motion, I could never be sure that the two would actually have the same trajectory. So this makes sense to me, that the larger separation tons are the ones that have the greatest distance between them. So there's this more time for the stuff to get jiggled around more, okay? But obviously to create a piece of light has a very short frequency, so there's very little chance for jiggling around from Brownian motion. So you have very little amount of jiggle happening to where the electron's position. The position of the electron can't change nearly as much when it's creating photons, visible photons, because the other drawing wasn't in the picture. Sorry about that. it's, it's quite hideous and disgusting, so you're not missing much. Yeah, I don't think I can scale it easily. Sorry. I was just a bunch of jiggling to represent Brownian motion. So the idea is the Brownian motion, just by itself, you could just think, if I just thought of Brownian motion itself. So if you just had the idea of the motion of just say something was jiggling up and down, and we call that Brownian motion. It's all going in all kinds of angles, but I'm just saying, let's just think of it up and down for just the sake of the argument. You could sort of understand that if that motion is consistent, and I'm creating photons that have very short wavelength, that I wouldn't move very far in the very short amount of time of a small ton. But if I was creating a radio wave, if that was the energy I was going to be shooting out, I could be really in a much different position when I release the second ton. So the polarization would be as wide almost as the wavelength. Yeah. And so that accounts for the reason why you can make bars that are so thick for radar. So the radar bars are really thick far apart, and the bars for photons are really close together. And the difference is because the radar is coming out with a much wider length of polarization. The length of this length is much, the separation, they're going say shit, I can't make my hands go the same way, but you know, and they're going in parallel paths and at their frequency. So their frequency is different, and but their paths are parallel, and there just has this separation. The lower the higher the frequency, the smaller that separation gets, and the bigger the frequency, the larger that separation can get, which means your antenna has to be longer to be able to receive both of the tons. The antenna has to be as long as the distance of the polarization. So anyway, I'm liking it as an explanation for polarization, and it now reduces the universe to only having one thing that actually has a shape polarization, and that's the force bits. So I think that's a huge step forward. I'm liking it. That's all I'll say. I mean, it might not be right, but after Wednesday thought, I'm liking it. I haven't found a real gaping flaw in it as an explanation for what polarization is. And so further explanations on that to come, no doubt. So anyway, enough of the video. Till next time and such.